course with the data. And so, in conclusion, the thing to remember with visual analytics is you need to understand the parameters and the representation and the sensitivity of that visual display to those things. Can we help have appropriate analysis to guide the user to the interesting areas of their data, focus more quickly on the problem, allow them to refine their analysis seamlessly through this discovery process. And in the end, our goal isn't to create a unifying one visual representation, because people need different ways of looking at the problem to do it effectively. And the key to success to me is that it needs to be user and problem driven. It needs to really find that appropriate balance between the human and the automated processing, and we need to have really good interactivity and ease of interaction. If there's too much of a delay, people will not use the phone. If it's not the right interface, people will toss it on the ground, pick up their radio, and get the job done. And we need to make sure if we're giving people predictions, they understand the prediction and the reliability of that prediction. I know someone is deploying a system for the city of Chicago that'll take in over 150 parameters and predict crime rates for the day. I don't know that there's any way for people to understand why they said there's going to be a spike in burglaries today. Can people understand all of this integrated data together? And can we make it intuitive for the end user? And what we found is the key for success is to provide the features that the user wants and not everything that we think will help them do their job better. Otherwise, they will immediately be confused and not use your tool. So, not too bad in terms of getting through a lot of material. I apologize for rushing, but I wanted to show you sort of the range of things that visual analytics can do, and I'm happy to take any questions in the remaining 5 minutes.
Hi, Simon French from University of Warwick. That was absolutely fascinating, and it was beautiful to see so much integrated from different disciplines. But one area that you sort of touched on was uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty in what you display, right, but you very seldom put the word geographic beside uncertainty. And as far as I can see, we know a lot about how to display uncertainty in ways that communicate validly, if you like, or in text, in graphs, and things like that. As soon as you come near a map, it becomes infinitely more difficult, and it's 20, 30 years behind in knowing what to do. Is that an unfair?
Oh, that's very true, and I know Alan McEachran had done a lot of work maybe about 10 years ago on uncertainty visualization and some geospatial things, and what they found, it's been a challenge in the visualization community because people misinterpret the representations we come up with unless you've got your error bars or some of your standard ways in statistical graphs. But in the end, most people preferred not to see it. They spent a lot of time in trying to determine intuitive ways, and then no one wanted to use it. But it becomes a really big problem. I mean, I come from, my background's in computer graphics, and I look at ways, and I've done a lot of work in illustrative ways, looking at how artists depict information. And, just the solidness of a line will convey a sense of surety and representation. And there's a lot of things we'd like to try to display in there. But what people try to do with jittered representations, etc., on maps, people sort of assume a point is exactly where the point is. So how do you give that confidence interval? And for time, how do you show temporal uncertainty, I think, is even a harder problem to try to convey. But I think you're absolutely right.
Yes, thank you very much for all this. I did notice that with maybe one or two exceptions, pretty much all the visualizations you showed us boiled down to geospatial and time series. And I was wondering, is there a strong reason for that, or is that just as far as you've had the chance to get so far?
Well, it's really the case of we have a lot of linked displays of other data, but I'm not coming from the GI sciences. I sort of look at it and am amazed that most of the clients we deal with, the majority of their data revolves around places, events, and times. So there is a strong linkage there. We're doing some work with fusion centers in the U.S. on mapping the movement of people over time to try to understand when criminal enterprises get new franchisees and where are their training grounds and things like this. And again, that came down to that type of thing. With a lot of business intelligence applications, we've actually done things that are the majority of the way of looking at it, and with like the port closure, we came up with ways there that are predominantly non-spatial, but there's a small spatial component to it. So we have a linked spatial display looking at the sales and competitive advantage of one large home good manufacturer in their South American market. The majority of the display is looking at products and stores that is not spatial, but then there's the link to the spatial. As I said, sort of coming from the computer science side, I had no idea the importance of location. And there's a huge history in geographical sciences analyzing this that we try to capitalize. But it's what the end user always says to us. When you look at in Indiana, it's called FES. I'm currently drawing a blank on what the system from APL is that was deployed to all the states for their public health surveillance. But anyway, when you look at that, it's all just a statistical list of t-values of how significant this anomaly is. So there's no map. When we talk to the state epidemiologist, he says, I want a map. I want to know where are these located. I want to know what the situation was yesterday so I get a clearer picture. So that's how a lot of people seem to think of it.
So for our last question,
Okay, thank you. Monica Busher from Lancaster University in the UK. Have you come across any data protection issues that arise from the integration of the data, or can you think of any data protection issues that
There's
arise?
a lot of issues there, and one of our colleagues, I have a colleague whose specialty is in privacy-preserving data analysis, and it was a little bit disappointing to me that when we were writing our initial proposal to get this center, that he's the one who said visualization is a great way to preserve privacy because you can show it at different levels of aggregation and you can allow people to see patterns and trends and not be able to uniquely identify people. With the public health data, there's a lot of privacy information. We do not get any personally identifiable information in the U.S. There's HIPAA guidelines that say what level we can see the data. We get our crime data. We do not get law enforcement sensitive data. We have done data looking at different levels of aggregation for animal diseases for a given food production organization in the U.S., where if you showed one point on the map, everyone would know it's Bob because he has the largest X farm in the state, and if there's a problem, it's going to be him. So we actually looked at making sure you don't show anything less than a certain aggregation level. And we also work on ways of doing spatial and temporal jittering that preserves the patterns but has no relationship to the actual data. So if you want to show it publicly, you can show the trend of spread of this given issue, this given syndrome, and not allow it to show the actual values. So that is an interesting problem. And so I think visualization has a lot of potential there. We do not deal, we have done some law enforcement sensitive data, et cetera, but we try to minimize that work and we try to just get information that is able to be shown at a higher level so that you can make decisions and then the people who have the appropriate rights to see the data can pull up the individual data. But I know with public health surveillance, the people that we work with say if you look at zip code level in the U.S., you can never find anomalies as if you have street block information. But the standard in the U.S. is just to look at zip code to preserve privacy. Cancer statistics in the U.S., there's another thing. You're only reported if there's X cases per 100,000 because otherwise it could be personally identifiable of who that is. And of course, the more data sources you integrate, if you look at broken arms, you look at people who were out from work, you start putting them together and you find out that it was Bob who broke his arm, who was from a drunkenness citation that occurred or something like this, so that you want to make sure you protect that.
Sorry to tell you that we're out of time, but I'm glad to get such interesting discussion. I think Dave is going to be around for a while, and you should certainly follow up with him. Thank you.
Thanks.